So, namaste and welcome to Satsang today. So, today I wanted to take a look at directly what reality actually is, um, as directly as we can, and as opposed to what we think it is, because the longest part of my awakening process, this body mind here, was to come to understand that reality was completely different to what I thought it was. Or I am really different, completely different to what I thought I was, that I am not at all what I have thought myself to be, that reality, myself, you, all of us are really pointing to the same one substanceless substance that is everywhere at all times, appearing as all of these things. And the delay for a lot of us is this allegiance that we have to the way that our mind perceives the world, the way that our mind perceives reality. So I was always kind of searching for this shortcut. Is there a shortcut to actually experience reality directly? And that's what I want to do today with you. So we're going to do some direct sort of inquiry, looking at what actually is. And then I want to just go into why we can't seem to stay in that direct seeing, what it is that seems to pull us out of that. So if you want to participate in this, you are very welcome to do so. And we're going to do it with our eyes open, at least initially. Let's keep our eyes open. You don't have to kind of force them, or just don't let yourself drift off into a deep state. Deep states are wonderful, peaceful, but they can also be resistance. If I had a penny for every time I've started to take someone through some self-inquiry and they've fallen asleep or fall into a deep meditative state, I would, have a lot of pennies. But and often it's a way that we resist on an unconscious level, seeing what is. Because once we've seen what is, it's really more challenging to go back to believing our mind 100% with conviction, at least. Perhaps the first time we see what reality is, we will go back to believing our mind. But we won't have the same conviction because we've had a direct experience. And we'll be more convinced of what's actually true. And we'll begin to see that the way that our mind is thinking about reality, thinking about ourselves and others, doesn't really apply to what you actually are. So I'm using this word reality. You could substitute it for consciousness, self with a capital S. Also use the word Noumenon, or you could call it presence, the supreme self, Brahman, the infinite intangibility, awareness, anything at all, silence, stillness. I'm using all of those words interchangeably to point to the only thing that's here, which isn't a thing. The only no thing that's here, appearing as all of this. And each time we have a seeing or an understanding that's preceded by a seeing of what's actually true, our mind structure is slightly changed. And the old, very convinced ways of thinking are beginning to break down. So what we have to do to really wake up and live as this 24/7 effortlessly, as what's real, is to be willing to be quite wrong. And not in a blame way, not as in I've done this wrong, just that how we've been taught to think about ourselves and the world, the universe, is not how it is at all. So let's do this now. If you want to join in, you absolutely can. So just with your eyes open, looking around the room that you're sitting in. And most people on this planet would agree that you're sitting somewhere in that room. And that you're in a room, and that room contains, excuse me, that room contains a whole lot of objects, different objects. Some of them might be sentient, my cat is here. There's sofas, there's furniture, there's plants, there's all kinds of things in the room. Wherever you are and watching this, the generally agreed concept that we're taught to believe in is that we're sitting here. So the body, where the body is, we say that's where we are. And we think that everything else then in the room is separate to us and different to us. And we give each object a name as if it's a real thing separate to us. And that naming of an object, cat, tree, laptop, body, thought, emotion, illusion. We give all these names to certain things, objects, some of them very, very subtle, but nonetheless objects. And we believe so much in that label that when we actually experience reality, it can be quite a shock that it's not at all what we thought. So just looking around the room again, as you just did, and recognizing, even if it's just mentally, conceptually at first, and that's okay, we'll take it deeper, that everything in the room and the room itself is made of the same substance, substanceless substance. There's only one thing that has ever existed, and it is you. And in some places in the room, you're appearing as visible, tangible. Other places, you're appearing as invisible and intangible. For a moment to experience this, if you just forget the names for a moment that you've put on everything, if you look at your sofa or your bed or the chair you're sitting in, and just forget what it's called, forget the names that we put on everything, just temporarily, I'll put them to the side, so that every object in the room kind of has the same isness. There's no specialty about the body, or the body isn't worth more than a plant. A plant isn't worth more than a stone. All these categories we're going to just let go of. And there's just all this stuff here in the room, which is made of the same essence of everything. And then this that hasn't manifested yet, the invisible, formless intangibility that seems to be punctuated by the objects, broken up into by the objects. Let's just at least conceptually understand that it is the same thing. It can appear as invisible, intangible, inaudible, and it can also appear as visible, tangible, audible. So there is only one thing: the room, your body, the seemingly innocuous empty space, all the objects in the room, and everything are made of the same thing. There is only one continuous oneness which is everywhere. Some places it's appearing as forms that move around and speak. Some places it's appearing as forms that just sit there and don't do anything, like a laptop. Some places it's appearing as subtle objects like thoughts, emotions. Other places still it's not appearing as anything at all. And yet it is unbroken and undivided. There aren't even two types of substance, form and formless. Those words point to the same thing. So just noticing how that feels, it may bring up some fear in your body or some shock. It may also bring up some deep peace, contentment. There is literally nothing else than you. You are everywhere, appearing as all of this. And just by entertaining this, being willing to experience that nothing is what you have thought it was. Of course, we still have access to all those labels and names we put on things for convenience when we talk to other bodies, not other beings, but other bodies. The labels take a background, a secondary seat. And the perception of reality is up front and center, meaning there is only one thing. It can appear as no thing at all and everything. It's appearing as these words right now, this satsang, everything in the room that you're sitting in, everything in the room that everyone's sitting in, all the rooms, all the towns, all the cities, all the planets, all the galaxies, the entire universe is made of the same stuff as the space in which it appears. Some places it's visible, some places it's invisible. Where it's visible and perceptible, we call it form. And when it's visible and perceptible with our human senses, we say it's actually real. We think it's actually become something else. We think it's actually divided itself into all these billions of forms, infinite number of forms, billions of human forms, and who knows how many others. But what if they are just appearances, sculpted out of this formlessness, that even when it does that, appears in a shape, it hasn't lost any of its inherent power, creativity, presence, fullness, richness. Even when it appears as a human being who can think, those thoughts might be that we're disempowered, that we're not good enough. It still is creating those thoughts from and as itself. It hasn't lost anything in that process at all. It could create right now an infinite number of universes, appearances at least, and it still would be completely as full as it was before it created anything. Creation is only an appearance of forms, not actual, just like water in a mirage on a road, or cloud that forms from the water vapor in the sky. Before the water vapor was invisible, but there, suddenly it's visible and white against the blue or grey background of the sky. That's what's happening with all the objects in the room. They're like clouds, but we make them solid and real by putting a label on them. And because we can interact with them with our human senses, we think they are outside of us, separate to us. But without the presence of our body and our human senses, if you can just imagine that for now, if your body was gone, you have no evidence at all that any forms are actually here, separate to, arising out of, and separate to this stuff from which everything is made. So reality awakening is really just living as this, as the nameless, substanceless stuff, and not even really preferring to have formlessness over form, not even preferring that, not even really preferring whether it's made a shape or it hasn't made a shape. So that when your eyes or ears interact with anything, or any of your senses, the food that you're eating, people that you're meeting, the work that you're doing, all of that, your children, your parents, your siblings, are this same invisible essence of pure consciousness appearing as something, but not actually something. It never really divided itself. It is one complete, whole, homogeneous unit across the entire universe. And there is nothing that is not it. It hasn't lost anything in dancing as all of these shapes. Each of these shapes contains the same propensities, qualities, inherent power, all of that as the original stuff itself. Why is it really worth recognizing this? Well, because then your eyes and your ears and your hands can interact and touch anything in reality at all without the belief that it's separate to you, outside of you. And then you realize that this body, your body, every human body, is not a body at all. It is the same substanceless stuff appearing to be a human body, but not actually. And thoughts are empty of substance. Emotions are empty of substance. Other beings are not really other. They are also appearances in you, the only thing that exists. And you're playing with all of these shapes in this apparent multiplicity and diversity, but not actual. And from that place, there is no way to be scared at all. There's nothing to be scared of. There still appears to be many things in this room. In the room, there'll always appear to be, while our senses are here, senses are picking up different vibrations. When my eyes take in a certain vibration, it will say, my brain will say red, and another vibration, it will say blue, and then another vibration, it will say hard or soft or rough or smooth, tall, short, all of that. But that is just an overlay on top of what's actually real. So again, just looking around the room that you're sitting in, and just don't know what anything is. Drop the labels on anything. And there's an aliveness and isness about what is then, whether it's appearing as something or it's not appearing as anything at all, nothingness. There's an equanimity then about the way you move around the world, interact with every object that you perceive. Phenomena and form are just shapes that this substanceless stuff is making. And there's an utter feeling of safety the more that you see this. Absolute safety. You're everywhere. That becomes clearer and clearer. There are no other beings. And the universe is reflecting back to you constantly what you think to be true. So you can use the labels: house, cat, wife, sister, brother, employee, boss, awakening, illusion. You can use all of those labels, but they don't really describe what it is that you're actually perceiving. You know what it is, though. You know it is the same mystery that's appearing as this whole universe. And with that, all separation has gone. All capacity to believe in illusion has gone. Even if there was such a thing as illusion, it would still be a shape being made by this that is. And fear arising in the body, shame, guilt, anger, all made of this, non-different to this. There is not a single thing that has ever existed, appeared to exist, that was not this. And they could never be. Everything is sculpted out of this. It is the great sculptor. It's constantly, you are constantly sculpting this entire universe. Every galaxy you create is different than the previous one and more amazing. Every human being you create is different to all the ones that has gone before. Every thought form is unique and exists for a brief moment in time and then disappears. Collectively, we call that mind, but it's just a stream of one thought after another. And it's made out of this. So we're not ignoring the way that the mind sees reality. We're just coming to recognize it doesn't apply to you, the real reality. Mind is talking about other things and other beings that it really thinks exists outside of and separate to you. And it can't really perceive this that we're just recognizing now. This is very, very different to how we've been taught to perceive reality. That we're a small, tiny being here for a short time, moving around somewhere on the planet, on a planet that's spinning around inside a galaxy, inside a universe. And nothing could be further from the truth. Your form is the universe as a whole, unbroken, undivided, indivisible, present everywhere equally all the time, just in some places perceptible to our visible range of vibration collectors that we call human senses. There's a range of vibrations that our senses can take in. And when something appears vibrating in that range that our senses can perceive, we call it real and separate and outside of us. But without your hands, have you got any idea if anything is solid? Only in your memory, only in thought. And inherently, we know this to be true. At nighttime, when you go to sleep, there is no diversity, no duality, no multiplicity, no time, no change, nothing. No thing. Just the substanceless substance, which is everywhere. And it is aware, it is alive, it is sentient. So awakening then is just living from that place with your eyes open while the body's moving and talking and working and cooking. Just because when we open our eyes in the morning, there seems to be a whole world of stuff and other beings that have magically come into existence. Can we see them more as just apparent shapes created, clouds made out of the sky, here for a while and then they'll be gone? Just practicing this recognition that there is only one thing here and that it is capable of appearing as an infinite number of ways or not appearing as anything at all. Noticing that when you engage the mind again, start to think about what is, it really begins to feel real then that there's someone here trying to reach awakening and that all these other things exist, all these different names for all these emotions that I'm feeling, all these different labels in my mind for all the things that I need to label. Where's the place where all those labels are pointing to the same one substanceless substance? And would there really be any capacity to carry on thinking about this that is once you get this? Wouldn't the mind just kind of go, there's nothing to think about actually? Maybe I can just then switch to appreciating the apparent diversity, the infinite number of ways I'm showing up today. It's the people I meet and the feelings I feel and the thoughts that go through my mind and the weather outside and the architecture and the animals and all of that, everything that seems to exist. That is your sculpture. And you're constantly rearranging it and changing it just for the joy of it. So all of this is just to point to the fact that if you keep using thought will be there. There's nothing wrong with thought. But if we keep referencing thought only as a way to perceive reality, it's going to emphasize that you're a someone, because thought is thinking about what comes in through the senses. And even when it thinks about this stuff, this substanceless substance, it can't really ever grasp it because it's trying to compare two things. And it tries to compare form and formless as if they're actually separate things, as if there was ever really two. There's the appearance of two, duality, but not actuality. Never actually really created something out of the formlessness. Nothing really arose out of this stuff. So I wanted to start with that today, because once we've had even a glimpse, or at least had our thought system dented severely, questioned severely. And again, I'm not anti-mind or thought. It's a beautiful way that human beings can express themselves. It's just not going to help you with reality so much, is it? Everything else that you need to do as a human being, the mind is great for that. Finding the right job and finding the right partner and all that stuff that we want. But not this. How could a momentary appearance of a thought ever know that in which it's appearing? Could it really? And if this that is the intelligence, then everything that is created, all the shapes, don't have any intelligence per se. The intelligence remains with the essence. So a thought isn't intelligent, mind isn't sentient. It's capable of some very, very powerful thought, and some of the best things human beings have ever achieved have come from the mind, and it's beautiful. But whenever we're labeling and naming things, different names, it's just going to be emphasizing that there are lots of different things. Myself, the separate being one of those, this person. And it's also going to emphasize that this is a human body. And when it's gone, I'm in trouble. Source of all fear. So imagine just, or even directly right now, perceiving with your senses, knowing that everything that you perceive, everything is you in disguise. As if you were so playful that you wanted to create an infinite number of versions of yourself, out of yourself, constantly, never-ending creation of apparent forms for no particular reason other than it is what's happening. So when I really began to get this, it really began to allow me to have a little distance from my mind, because I realized that I had been blaming my mind for such a long time. Why hasn't it come up with the answer yet? Except I thought it was me. Why haven't I come up with the answer yet? Why can't I awaken? Because I thought I needed to awaken. And I came to see I'm already this, already free, as everything and everyone is. So I hope that it helps you to have a different perspective on what's actually real. And I would urge you to practice this while you're out and about, going about the rest of your day, if you want to, of course, to just let your eyes rest upon different apparent objects. Some you'll be sure that you know, some you will give labels to that are quite challenging to give up. Husband, wife, daughter, son, mother, father, money, awakening, time, death, life, all of those things that we really have such allegiance to, those labels, those names. But if everything is just this, does it really matter so much, the coming and going of all of these objects? Even the objects that we call body, human body. It's just somewhere where you became visible for a short while in terms of eons. And then later you'll become invisible. And then over there you just become visible. A body was born. Then later that'll become an all over, all the time, across the entire universe. You are becoming visible and then invisible. Many, many infinite places. Every single shape that you can, just because you can. From the most subtle of phenomena to the most tangible, to the earth itself, to the whole universe, and everything in between. have a play with this and see if you can to begin to feel that equanimity, that peace. We're only upset by the labels we give things, not the actual things. If I call one particular shape my boss, I'm going to have a lot of thoughts about that boss. And actually, the label has become more important to me than the actual experience of being with that shape, that apparent being. And I can live my whole life experiencing these labels and never actually directly experiencing this that is. So we have just done that today, just to give ourselves a taste of what that is like. And as you experience it more and more, it will become more and more real, obvious, the only thing that's ever been. And the old way of perceiving will begin to diminish, recede into the background. So it may start as a concept, but just showing up, experiencing, and not labeling so much. Getting curious when you do need to label, when you really feel, I really want to hold on to this idea of this being. And you have nothing to lose in this, because you're only coming to see what everything already is. Nothing to lose and everything to gain. Peace, joy, abundance, love, compassion, clarity, vitality, well-being, to name but a few. Okay. So I would like to open it up for questions. I have no questions at all sent in, so everyone is either very, very shy or completely enlightened already, or some combination of those. So if anyone here would like to ask a question about any aspect of awakening, feel free to raise your hand, Martin, when you're ready.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
Hi. Why do I, infinite being, need or want to recognize myself?
It's one of those paradoxes, isn't it? As this that is, the substanceless substance, you don't even need to recognize yourself. Already free, completely whole, and as you always were. But then when you play with the shape of a human being, as a human being, not actually a human being, but the shape of a human being, there seems to be ignorance and a desire to recognize what's actually true. So you could say you do and you don't need to at the same time. It's a bit of a paradox, but if you can kind of just sit with that for a while, then as a human being, you have the capacity to think and categorize and analyze and all those things that our wonderful mind can do. But in that categorizing and analyzing, we lose sight of the undivided wholeness of reality. And there's suffering in that because it costs the body and mind so much energy to buy into the labels and the division because it's so utterly untrue. It takes a lot of energy to sustain it. That's what we call suffering. So then there's this drive, this desire to recognize reality clearly, to bring an end to suffering, but also to recognize what's real. There's kind of inherent in the mechanism of duality, of the apparent duality in the mind, inbuilt into that. There comes to be this suffering, and then the desire to be free of that arises, of course.
Okay, yeah. So the suffering is the lesson, or the motivation, or the kind of grit or something that, yeah, for want of a better words are not very good sometimes, but
I get it completely, don't worry.
yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It seems like learning lessons rather than separating and rejecting and trying to, I don't know what really, escape the now or whatever. Something like that.
Yeah. And as that recognition deepens, it's easier and easier to see that that the suffering was only ever caused by or a result of artificially dividing yourself into an infinite number of pieces.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Melanie?
Yeah, I'm getting a little confused because now that I think I'm seeing everything as the Noumenon, I don't know why, if I'm in meditation and I start becoming aware of chatter or thoughts, why I don't just stay with that, because that's the Noumenon. Why do I try to go back to what I think is better? I zoom out.
Mm-hmm.
Like if all is the Noumenon. One's not better than the other. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, if my mind is what maybe I used to think was zooming in, oh, I should zoom out because that's the real Noumenon. I don't know.
It's just this, and we all have it, this very lingering allegiance we have to the idea that sounds, words, physical objects are actually that. So let's say you're in deep meditation and you're just hearing this infinite silence and you're extraordinarily peaceful, and then the dog starts barking or the neighbors put the music on really loud. There's inherent in that moment when the body kind of tenses up, that's evidence of the belief that that's something different to what you were just experiencing. So the dog barking, the music, whatever it is different too. And I don't want that. I want this that I was just experiencing. And as many times as we've seen that there is only the one essence that's everywhere, this allegiance to naming and labeling continues for a little while. So if I even say the word neighbors, that can bring into our mind a whole lot of meanings. Oh, they're wonderful. Went round, had dinner with them. They feed my cat when I'm away, or they keep me up all night. They're just so inconsiderate. They don't play music quietly, So it's not even just the label. It's the thoughts that come attached to that label. If we take the example of the dog barking, it's just one or two barks and the mind's already saying, this is going to go on for hours like it does every day, and might as well just get up and do something. I'm not going to be able to get back into my meditation. On and on and on it goes. And why don't they feed the dog properly? Why don't they take it out? All that stuff that comes attached to that label dog. So, or bark, but you get the idea. So for quite some time, there is an allegiance to the idea that the dog bark and the neighbors are actually something different to the silence that we were just experiencing. It's getting less and less each time we experience the silence, because we're recognizing it's everywhere more and more. That ideas are talking about things that don't exist outside of us, separate to that silence. But you can feel the body is telling you at any point how much you're still convinced that there are actual other things than this infinite silence.
Right. And isn't the thoughts about the dog and the neighbors, aren't the thoughts also the Noumenon?
Yes. But we
So
really
if I'm having
so go ahead.
So if I'm having those thoughts, I can stay with them, because by staying with them, I'm staying with the Noumenon. I don't have to return back to that deep silence.
Theoretically, yes. But if our body starts to feel disturbed when we go with the thoughts, we're still actually believing they are thoughts. So sometimes a little inquiry there, what actually is this? Is this a dog? Is this a thought? Is this a human being? Is this actually music? Will really help us to loosen that association with that thing.
Also, it's if I think it is a thought that's separate from the silence, that's the agitation.
Yeah. The first division is there is something other than silence. Form actually did arise out of formlessness. That's what the mind is convinced of. So it's not the dog barking or the neighbors or the thoughts arising. It's the idea that there's something that could arise that is the first and only illusion that we need to undo.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Okay, so I'll take the hands that are up and then we'll leave it after these three. So Elaine.
When you're talking about dog barking, and all the way through this morning, you've been, I've just had this word, I'm becoming a cough. Had this for 4 weeks, and it's like, is this it? Yeah, I mean, it's, I think I'm completely losing something. And you were talking about, I mean, I never like that thing about looking around a room, because having taught art, there's figure ground, so concept. So, but all the time I'm looking in myself, and there's cough, just this, and the labels and everything I've been trying to build around this cough, why it's here, and it's a virus, it's come. And it's entered me, and it's got a job to do, and it's got something to give, and it's got this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, is it just me?
Yeah, what if it's just you? And so is the
Yeah.
body. Yeah.
And it's always going to be, I mean, this is it. There's just nothing beyond that. Yeah, is it?
You're gonna have the cough as long as you have the cough, but you don't have to go on that whole thought, oh, I'm gonna be sick for days now, and it's gonna, or everything that comes from that. Where did I get it from? And all of this stuff. I can't sleep when I'm ill, I'm coughing, I can't sleep properly. All of that starts from this tiny word cough. And then what is it what is it actually? It's going to lead to this, that, and the other, and I might have to go see the doctor. And of course, if that needs to happen, it will. The body will go to the doctor, but
yeah,
we can go through that process, that experience, without all this noise going on inside about it. And a cough can even become part of your meditation. Here's me appearing as a cough. Here's me appearing as silence. Here's me appearing as a cough again.
I remember the chopping vegetables. That's cough, silent, cough. And so, yeah, it became a bit for a time. Okay. Still want it to go.
That's okay. Of course you do.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone that says, woohoo, I've woken up this morning with a cough,
And I still keep putting endless labels to it, endless meanings, or looking for them, rather than
maybe that's why it's here, to show you, wow, there's so much thought around this thing.
Oh, it's exhausting. Yeah. Okay. Right, I'll take it. Thank you.
Happy practicing. Have fun with that. Thank you. Michael?
Good morning.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is.
Yes. I just wanted to share some insights that's showing up for me. I started this journey with you a few years ago, and it was about suffering. It was about healing, self-help, improvement. And I find myself now in this very expanded space, and I'm seeing that the core of the suffering is actually believing I'm limited and this separate self. And there's this expansion that just wants to be more than a separate self. And like I'm bored with that. Like I am so like that's really what's the core of my experience is like, okay, the mundane is nothing like, I mean, I don't know, there was something more that I was looking for than what was being experienced. And that was the root of the suffering underneath it all. And like now I'm at a place like it's like, wow, like what is this extraordinariness? Like, what is this? Like, am I limited? It like, I just want to share kind of this where I'm at now and where I started with you. Deeply curious now, like what would that look like? To like, what is that next embodiment? Yeah.
And that kind of points back to Martin's question. For me, that answers it beautifully. Like, what's the next way I'm going to reveal myself to myself? Because there's an infinite number of ways I can even do that. Even in one particular human lifetime, there's an infinite number of ways. Like today, when in my meditation this morning, it's completely different to any other time I'd seen myself. And it will never be the same twice. And yet I'm seeing the same thing all the time, but there's this falling in love that's happening with that process, right? That unfoldingness, that ever deepening mystery, richness, isness, whatever you want to call it. And utterly bored, terribly bored of feeling limited. Done that 100,000 different ways. And quite ready to drop that now. Not because it's wrong, it's just you can only wear the same outfit so many times, and when you're done with it, you're done with it.
Yeah, and it's like seeing, okay, so yeah, like it just started to rain here and pour and the sound and stuff like that. And it's like a different meaning to gratitude because you're kind of like seeing things and feeling things from a very extraordinary seeing. Yeah. It isn't mundane. It isn't nothing. Yeah.
It's amazing that something that is everywhere and indivisible and formless can show up as rain that feels beautiful on your skin when you go out and get wet. And how does it do that? It's a mystery and it's so amazing. And your whole life becomes like that. How do I taste like chocolate? How do I, that smell when it's been raining, that fresh, that smell, how do I do that? If there's only one substance, how do I pull that off? It's not a question you really need an answer to. It's just like, wow, that's so amazing. It's a whole different way to live a human existence.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of joy. Thank you. We'll finish with Leolita.
Hello.
Hi.
As I listened to you today, I looked around and I saw a plant which doesn't look very healthy. And for me, it's very clear that it's helpful to really experience reality or something like reality if I take off the label. So, but I feel a wish or a desire to help.
Yeah.
plant or many people, I see suffering. And there's a kind of, I don't understand in my mind, if the plant and the people are me, so why should I do anything? So it doesn't make sense, because the outer is the inside. And nevertheless, there is a deep desire in me, I always feel, when I see people suffering outside. So I don't know, is it necessary to do it or not? Why do I have this desire? Do I just do nothing and work further on with my own awakening? So this is the thing.
What if they're both the same thing? What if your own awakening, deepening is the same thing as doing what you can in the world to help, whether it's watering the plant or feeding it or helping another human being who's suffering? Could they be the same thing? One's expressing itself in an inner way, and the other, same thing, expressing itself in an outer way. Because the love that we have for our own self, we all love our own self in some way. We care for our existence and we don't want it to end. As it becomes clear that that self is much bigger than we first thought, much bigger, it makes sense that that same love and compassion would spread to all forms equally, because it's all you. And in that, the human body starts to might do and say things, that can really make a difference, really help from its infinite resources when it recognizes itself. So they're not necessarily two different things. My mind said the same thing when I realize who I am. I'm just going to sit on the sofa all day in bliss, and I won't want to do anything else. And the world of form doesn't exist, so why would I even, but because you know what the world of form is, you're utterly in love with it. Utterly in love with the mystery of all of this. The world is not different at all than your very own self, than the self. Of course, you're going to fall back in love with it again then. When you're not seeing as everything is outside of you and separate to you, and the fear is gone. It's just going to be a deep curiosity, respect, awe, wonder, at all these different ways you're appearing, all of it. Every day, new and ever more delightful ways you can appear. You can never run out. Of course, you're going to really love those forms because you made them, you created them, you sculpted them, you're doing it all the time. And, a sculptor or an artist, they wouldn't paint a picture or sculpt something if they absolutely hated it. They would only sculpt what they love. And everything is your sculpting, and you've done it out of love. Look at this I can make, look at this and this and this and this. All these ways. The very act of making a shape, a human being or a planet or a stone or a plant, is an act of love. Let me make this so I can love myself. I can appear to look at it, me and this apparent other being, so that I can love myself, appreciate myself. Hard to do that when you're just everywhere all the time. So it creates these shapes to go, like we're doing now. We can have this apparent conversation, and it's really just us loving each other, isn't it? The one being loving itself. From that place, you can't not help. It's even if your body doesn't do anything in particular, your very essence is radiating to all beings. Love and acceptance and compassion. Mind can't really get that, so it kind of goes, if you carry on awakening, you're just not going to care about anything.
It's like my mind tries to understand the words and doesn't get it, and it's like there is a kind of awareness which responds. Both.
So, and that's okay, right? Mind has done the best job it can with the limited tools it has, and it's not its fault. But also, we don't need to completely reference it anymore as the only sort of valuable resource. You can recognize yourself directly without the mind ever understanding. And it might always be a little bit like, what just happened? I don't get what happened there. You know, and it's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for all your intelligent, wonderful questions. It's so amazing how we all grow together as a group, of a parent group at least. So thank you for being here with me today. Thank you. Namaste. Wonderful.